scary. You know the big lie. Trust us. We can handle this. The markets will take care of themselves. The banks said it. The government said it. Well, today, a Senate report exposed it all with stark and frightening language. Our country's biggest banks were, and I quote here, shoddy, risky, and deceptive. Goldman Sachs, the world's most successful investment bank, knew. They knew before just about anyone else just how bad it was. And not one person who worked there, not one, ever said, stop. No one said, we'd better tell the customers we've been selling this junk to. Or how about a simple call to someone in the government, hey guys, this merry-go-round is going too fast, we're about to crash. Nope. Goldman made a decision, we can make some money here. Don't tell anyone what's coming. So much for trust us. Look, I used to be the Attorney General of New York. I went after these guys because for the capitalist system to work, everyone has to play by the rules. It's inconceivable to me. In fact, it's obscene that no big fish has been reeled in. No one who matters has gone to jail. This is too big a story for one night, folks, so we're going to do a series called They Got Away With It. We're going to keep going after this story until we get all the answers. And to help us get started, here's one of the best financial reporters in the business world. Once upon a time, he was also one of those Wall Street analysts that I prosecuted. Henry Blodgett, welcome. You've got some questions for me, I know, but you know what? You're a good guy to come back on the show, and it's great to have a chance to have a conversation with you.
And you're good to have me. Thank you.
Pleasure.
And it's great. Your producers have actually asked me to ask you some questions. Very nice to ask you some questions for a change.
Without lawyers present.
Elliot Spitzer, why is nobody in jail?
Well, look, I think we got one incredibly valuable window into this today. Gretchen Morgenson had an article in the New York Times in which she says Tim Geithner, the Treasury Secretary, was going around to prosecutors saying, don't bring cases, it will rattle the markets. Now, if that's the case, and I sure expect a lot of people are going to be zeroing in on that and saying, if he did anything like that, it's not only outrageous, it is, you know, it's a lot worse than that. So they're going to be finding out, I presume, emails, phone calls. Did he meet and say it will rattle the markets? Because what rattles the markets is fraud, corruption, and abuse, the likes of which we've had.
If he did that, that's outrageous.
Right.
But to be very simple,
right.
Was it weak laws or weak enforcement?
More weak enforcement than weak laws. Let's be very clear. The laws are crystal clear. You lie to a customer. You withhold material information. That's all you got to do. Look, our case was all the analysts on Wall Street, and not to relive history, were basically being told, look, your bonuses get bigger if you pump up good stocks, even if you think they're bad. Okay, we tried to zero in and change that. That's what was going on with all these junk bonds. The investment banks had these Clayton documents. They were told these mortgages that were underneath these highly sophisticated mortgage-backed securities were going to go bust. They knew it. The proof is there. That information traveled up into the companies. They still marketed them. They still gave the rating agencies gave them AAA ratings. They were still marketed. And when Goldman knew this was going to go south in December '06, took a short position, others betting against the market, did they tell anybody? No, they kept selling the stuff.
Let me defend Wall Street. Goldman Sachs is a bookie. They sit between people who want to make bets. Sometimes when there's no one that wants to take the short side of the bet, Goldman has to take it. That is perfectly legal. It is done every day, and yet you're making it sound like a crime.
No, this is not. They were not making a market so there was liquidity. They made an affirmative decision. We are going to bet against this stuff because in December '06, they said, and it's in this report, it's amazing, a high-level, top-of-the-company decision, this stuff is going to go bust. They knew it, and a lot of people had seen this coming. Other people placed bets, but they weren't lying about it. Goldman had customers they were selling this stuff to. And here's the biggest lie. The investment banks had said for years, we will regulate ourselves. We don't need government to ensure that we're honest. We will do it ourselves. Trust us. We will look out for the public. This puts the lie to it. They were corrupt, greedy, and avaricious.
That is my point.
And I'm worked up about it.
But that's my point. That's not weak enforcement. That's Lord of the Flies.
That's right.
Regulation.
That's right.
We'll take care of it. So that's weak laws.
No, the
Congress
laws were there.
bears some responsibility for
yes
that.
and no. The laws were there. As I said, look, remember, I did this as the New York Attorney General. All we had was, we had a Martin Act, but really it was nothing more than a common law statement of principles. You can't lie to people. Being wrong, and everybody says, well, gee, maybe they were just wrong, other people were wrong. Being wrong is not a crime, just so it's very clear. Being wrong is not being deceptive. Where you're deceptive and hence liable either civilly or criminally is when you affirmatively misrepresent. That's what they were doing by withholding information. If they'd gone to their customers and said, we're going to tell you something that may be material to you. We're betting against this thing that we're selling to you. So that would have been different.
You said in your opening, which is an opinion that is going to be echoed around the country and world, it is obscene that no big fish is in jail. What big fish should be in jail?
Well, I'm not going to name individuals yet. That would be improper. But I'll tell you, when I have seen the documents, these Clayton documents that say, and the FCIC, Phil Angelidis' commission, got these and unearthed them, all the more power to him and credit to him for doing that. These documents, which are documents produced for the banks, because the banks asked these companies, go out and tell us, are these mortgages any good? Because we're securitizing them, highfalutin language for reselling it. We're selling it to other people. So we got to know, is it any good? And the information they got back was, no, it's not good. And they kept selling it. This information, they were securitizing junk. Back in 1999, when I was AG, we began making subprime lending cases. We saw the sort of fraud that was pervasive in that industry, in that sector. We tried to bring a case, and we made a lot of cases. By 2004, I wrote an article where I said, this stuff's going to default. Everybody knows it. And you know what happened? The OCC and the banks went to court to stop us from digging deeper. They didn't want people to know for the simple reason they were making too much money on it. That's the corruption.
So if the problem is weak enforcement, is it weak and wimpy prosecutors? Or is it Tim Geithner and others saying, lay off, we've got to save the system, then we'll worry about it?
I think it's a combination of many factors. It's not easy to make these cases. You're standing up to some very, very powerful institutions, and not every office, not every individual wants to do it, is willing to do it. You have the Tim Geithners of the world, and he isn't the only one who kind of go around saying, well, you know, we're not so sure you should. When I first brought the first series of cases against virtually every major investment bank in New York, the SEC came to me and said, you don't know what you're doing. I said, no, you don't know what you're doing. You're sitting here and accepting the fact that fraud is, you know, Harvey Pitt, who was the chairman of the SEC back then, said, we want a gentler, kindler SEC. I said, that's absurd. I want an enforcer with teeth. And so the entire sensibility in that sector was be kind and gentle instead of protect the integrity of the market. And I said to them, if you don't protect the integrity, there'll be a cataclysm, and that's what we got.
Isn't part of the problem that there are regulators everywhere? Nobody knows who's in charge of anything. You stepped in and said, you know what, SEC, you're incompetent, I'm taking over. Isn't that part of the problem? We just don't have a simple regulatory system?
Sure it is. We should simplify it. We should make it coherent. We've got to do that. The competition among regulators works also. Look, Henry, we got to move on. You're going to come back here often and often because you've seen it from every side. I haven't seen it from every side, but a lot of different sides. It's a great conversation with you. Henry, thanks so much, and it's great to talk to you any day, especially no lawyers present. All right, coming up, Democratic Senator Carl Levin of Michigan today released his bombshell report on what really led to the collapse. I found it shocking because it confirmed so much of what we already suspected, and I think you will too. I spoke with Senator Levin just moments ago. Senator, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
I want to go back, if we could, to December of 2006, when Goldman Sachs realized that the entire mortgage industry was going to blow up. There was going to be a cataclysm. Am I reading this report right, that what they did once they realized this was figure out how to make money on this, instead of going to the government or even telling their clients that there was a problem there?
They decided that they were going to do what is called the Big Short, which means they were going to bet very, very heavily against the mortgage market and to sell securities short, as it's called. They were in a hole because they had bought those securities and had actually done some of the securitization themselves. They wanted to get out of that position. They not only got out of that position, they went very, very short and made a whole lot of money at the same time, misleading their clients into buying those securities with representations. For instance, in the case of the Hudson security that we went into in great depth, they told the future customers that they were on the same side as the customer. In other words, that they were investing in that security with the customers. As a matter of fact, they were betting $2 billion against the Hudson security. At the same time, they were representing to their clients or potential customers that their interests were aligned. That was totally misleading, and they made a lot of money in that year, 2007, on that Big Short, which they acknowledge in their own internal documents is what they were doing, but publicly they continue to deny it.
Look, I don't want to put too fine a point on this. They lied. They lied to their clients and they lied to the public. Isn't it that simple?
They misled their clients, and they attempted to mislead the Senate and they, I believe, misled their clients and their customers. It's that direct. I don't want to reach any, as you know, with your background, I'm not going to reach any legal conclusions.
Right.
That's up to prosecutors and up to the Securities and Exchange Commission, and hopefully they're going to look at our entire report, because there's a lot of factual material here against a lot of firms and a lot of individuals, not just Goldman.
Senator, I'm going to take a leap. I'm going to say it out loud very directly. Goldman Sachs, you lied to the public. You lied to your clients. You got a problem. You come on this show. Sue me. I don't care. You lied to the public. You should be prosecuted. I'm going to say it right now, and I hope they are. I want to come back to something deeper, though. For years and years and years, the entire time I was Attorney General, when I was in office, these investment banks said, trust us. Self-regulation is going to solve all the problems in the market. Alan Greenspan with his libertarian shtick and all that stuff, it was idiocy. But they said, trust us, we will regulate ourselves. Facing this cataclysm, they knew it was coming. Did they do anything to stop it?
Well, no, quite the opposite. They first of all protected themselves from the position that they were in, and then they went way beyond protection and made a whole lot of money in betting against the mortgage market that they could see from their own materials had plenty of holes in these mortgages that had been that they had bought, that they had solicited. They very much were kind of a sponge soaking up these mortgages from a bank called Washington Mutual, the state of Washington Mutual, by the billions. These defective mortgages were being solicited by these big banks, including Goldman, but not only Goldman, and then they were putting them in securities, selling them to pension funds, making a lot of money on the sale, and then in many cases betting against those very same securities that they were selling to those pension funds. So I would say that they not only were able to protect themselves against losses, which other banks suffered by their practices and tactics, but in the case of Goldman, they made big money on going short, betting against their own clients, betting against the mortgage market in 2007.
So look, one of the biggest lies ever perpetrated, in my view, was being pushed on us by the investment banks for an entire decade, longer than that, when they were saying, trust us, we will take care of the public interest. And they did everything exactly opposite to that, sunk us deeper and deeper into this hole and created this cataclysm.
Yeah. I'll tell you, Elliot, you must have not just a cop on the beat, and we put that cop back on the beat, hopefully, in the Dodd-Frank bill, but we also have to have an aggressive cop on the beat. So we have written the laws now to get some regulation back into these markets to make sure that they are clean and that people can rely on them. It's very important that people be able to rely on our markets, and the damage that's been done to those markets has got to be corrected.
I got to ask you a political question, and I don't want to be partisan about this, but how is it that the Republicans in the House of Representatives have learned the wrong lesson from the crisis of 2 years ago? How is it that they're going back immediately to a deregulatory philosophy, sort of saying the same things that were said in the run-up to this crisis and trying to destroy and gut the law Dodd-Frank that you worked so hard to pass?
It beats me. It seems to me that the lessons are so clear. You don't obviously want to overregulate. Nobody wants to overregulate. But the problem that got us into this difficulty was not overregulation. It was underregulation. People know that. People know that we made the mistake of deregulating and that these deregulation steps were wrong. And, I mean, it's so obvious they were wrong. The public knows they were wrong. The public wants the cop back on the beat. They don't want excessive regulation. Nobody does, but they do want regulation. They want us to have people who are protecting our food, protecting our water, protecting our free markets. People know that. And I don't know why the Republicans don't see it. I think they're on not only the wrong side of history, haven't learned the lessons of history, recent history, but I think they're also on the wrong side of where public opinion is on this issue.
You know, Senator, you are so right. Nobody's for overregulation. All the years I was Attorney General, brought cases, I said there's only one simple rule you need to enforce when it comes to this. Tell the truth to your customer, tell the truth to the public. That's it. And then all those things you write about in your marvelous report wouldn't have happened. They wouldn't have lied to their customers. They wouldn't have lied to the government, and this cataclysm wouldn't have happened. Senator, I just want to thank you for yeoman's work in putting this report together. And I'm sure you've seen it, but Inside Job, everywhere I go, I tell people, go see that movie. They deserve the Oscar. It tells the story almost as well as your great report does.
Well, thanks so much.